The Grand Council chamber stretched across a space so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling.
Behind this rock.
Representatives from 847 conquered civilizations sat in their assigned seats waiting. Above them, the three Vex-Thari High Arbiters floated in crystalline spheres, their ancient bodies sustained by technology no other species understood. Taemin walked through the massive doors, his footsteps echoing. Behind him, Jiwoo carried the documents humanity had prepared. She looked nervous. This was her first time facing the council, though she had studied their languages for 10 years. Captain Hyunwoo stayed near the entrance with their security team.
It's okay.
Only 2 humans could approach the center of the chamber. The High Arbiter Calvek spoke first. His voice boomed through translation devices that every species wore. Humanity has received our ultimatum. You have 1 solar cycle to surrender your worlds, your weapons, and your freedom. We expected your leaders to sign the treaty. Instead, you request an audience. Why? Taemin stopped at the designated position. A circle of light marked where humans were permitted to stand. He did not bow. We request the right to present our case. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that comes from surprise. In 3,000 years, no species had tried to negotiate after receiving the Vex-Thari ultimatum. Most begged for mercy. Some attacked in desperation. None asked to make a presentation. Another arbiter, Felthara, leaned forward in her sphere. Your case? You are 1 species on 3 worlds. We are an empire of millions of planets. What case could you possibly present? Jiwoo whispered something to Taemin. He nodded and spoke louder. We request 1 concession before we begin. Allow us to bring a witness who has fought humanity before. The laughter stopped. Calvex's expression changed. A witness? What kind of trick is this? No trick, Taemin said calmly. If you want to understand humanity, you should hear from someone who has faced us in battle. Someone who survived the experience. The third arbiter, Borkanis, made a gesture. Screens appeared around the chamber showing human military records. We have studied your conflicts. You fought the Threnody Coalition 50 years ago. Border disputes. Minor skirmishes. The war lasted 2 years and ended in a negotiated peace. This is your greatest military achievement? It is our most instructive one, Taemin replied. That is why we wish to bring General Vormix of the Threnody Coalition. He commanded their forces during that war. The name caused visible reactions. Several species in the chamber shifted in their seats. The Threnody delegation, sitting in Section 47, looked startled. Vormix was a legend among military commanders. He had won battles against species far more powerful than his own. But he had never spoken publicly about the human conflict. Calvex was silent for a long moment. Why would a Threnody general speak on behalf of humanity? Ask him yourself, Taemin said. We have already sent him an invitation. He accepted. Felthara made a clicking sound that the translators rendered as annoyance. This is irregular. The council does not grant audiences to military officers of neutral species. Then consider it theater, Taemin suggested. Jiwoo looked at him sharply, but he continued. You have already decided to conquer us. You believe it will be simple. What harm is there in letting us prove you right? When General Vormix confirms that humanity is weak, unprepared, and easily defeated, you will have the validation you seek. And if he says otherwise, well, you have 847 conquered species as proof of your strength. The logic was sound, even if the delivery was bold. The arbiters conferred silently through their private network. Finally, Calvex spoke. Very well. You have 3 days to produce this witness. If General Vormix does not arrive, or if he refuses to speak, we will consider your petition rejected. The conquest will begin immediately. Understood, Taemin said. He bowed slightly, just enough to show respect without showing submission. As they walked back toward the entrance, Jiwoo kept her voice low. Do you really think he will come? He will come, Taemin said. I served in the border war. I know what happened out there. Vormix has carried that knowledge for 50 years. He will want to speak. Hyunwoo met them at the doors. The ship is ready, but our people are asking questions. They want to know what the plan is. Taemin looked back at the vast chamber, at the hundreds of species who had already lost their freedom. The plan is to make them understand what war with humanity actually means. Not through threats, not through demonstrations of force, through truth. 3 days passed quickly. Humanity waited. Earth prepared its defenses, not because anyone believed they could win a military conflict with the Vex-Thari Empire, but because humans always prepared. It was part of their nature, learned through centuries of conflict. On the third day, a Threnody vessel appeared in orbit around the Council station. It was a military ship, marked with General Vormix's personal insignia. The Council had expected him to arrive alone or with a small staff. Instead, he brought a full honor guard and requested formal entry to the chamber. The Vexthari granted permission. They were curious now. What could this general possibly say that would matter? When Vormix entered the chamber, every species watched. The Threnody were an insectoid race, tall and multi-limbed, their bodies covered in chitin that looked like natural armor. Vormix was old. His carapace bore scars from dozens of battles. He walked slowly with dignity, and his honor guard followed in perfect formation. Taemin and Jiwoo stood in their circle of light. Vormix stopped before reaching them and turned to face the arbiters. High Council, Vormix said, his voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. I am General Vormix, 3rd Commander of the Threnody Coalition Defense Force. I accept the invitation to speak about humanity. I do so not as their ally, but as their former enemy. And I do so because the galaxy deserves to know the truth before making a terrible mistake. Calvex gestured for him to continue. Speak then. Tell us why we should fear a species that controls only 3 worlds. Vormix's compound eyes reflected the light in the chamber. Fear, no High Arbiter. I am not here to tell you to fear humanity. I am here to tell you to understand them. There is a difference. And that difference may determine whether your empire survives the next century. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the ambient sounds of the environmental system seemed to fade. Taemin allowed himself a small smile. Vormix had come to tell the truth. Now the real presentation could begin. Jiwoo opened her documents and prepared the visual records. Hyunwoo signaled their technical team to stand ready. Everything humanity had planned for this moment came down to what happened next. General Vormix looked at Taemin and nodded once. The human ambassador returned the gesture. 2 former enemies now standing together, about to reveal something the galaxy had never considered. What it meant to fight a species that had spent 10,000 years fighting itself. General Vormix stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber and waited for the murmuring to stop. The species gathered here had witnessed countless military briefings, heard endless reports of conquest and surrender. But something about the old Threnody commander made them uneasy. Perhaps it was the scars on his carapace. Perhaps it was the way he looked at the arbiters without fear. Before I begin, Vormix said, I must ask the Council a question. What do you believe is humanity's greatest military virtue? Orcanus, the 3rd Arbiter, made a dismissive sound. They have no virtues. They are a young species with primitive weapons and limited reach. They have fought 1 minor war in the past century. That is not an answer to my question, Vormix replied. I did not ask about their capabilities. I asked about their virtue, their philosophy of war. Calvex leaned forward in his crystalline sphere. Very well, General, tell us. What is humanity's greatest military virtue? Restraint, Vormix said simply. The word hung in the air. Several species laughed. Others looked confused. The concept seemed absurd. Restraint was not a military virtue. Strength was a virtue. Speed was a virtue. Ruthlessness was a virtue. But restraint? Da-Eun, the human archivist who had accompanied Taemin's delegation, stepped forward. She carried a data device that connected to the chamber's display systems. With the Council's permission, we would like to show you footage from the border war, the conflict between humanity and the Threnody Coalition. Felthara gestured her approval. Proceed. Let us see this restraint you speak of. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Massive screens appeared, showing space above a disputed asteroid field. The date marker indicated this was from 50 years ago, early in the conflict. Threnody ships moved in attack formation. They outnumbered the human vessels 3 to 1. Vormix narrated as the footage played. This was the 3rd week of the war. My fleet had superior numbers and superior positioning. We expected the humans to retreat or call for reinforcements. Instead, they broadcast a message on all frequencies. The recording played. A human voice translated into Threnody language spoke calmly. Threnody vessels. This is Captain Sung-Ho of the Earth Defense Ship Horizon. We are prepared to defend this sector, but we do not wish to inflict casualties. We request you withdraw to a neutral distance while negotiations continue. More laughter from the Council. To request an enemy withdrawal while outnumbered seemed like madness or desperation. We ignored the message, Formix continued. We attacked. Watch what happens next. The human ships moved with precision. They targeted Threnody weapons systems, disabling rather than destroying. When Threnody crew pods ejected from damaged ships, human vessels moved to recover them. Every action was measured, controlled. They were winning, Formix said quietly. Within 4 hours, they had disabled 60% of my fleet. Not destroyed, disabled. They carefully avoided hitting our life support systems, our crew compartments, our escape routes. And then they stopped. The footage showed human ships holding position while Threnody vessels limped away, carrying their rescued crew members. They sent another message, Formix said. The recording played again. Threnody fleet, we have secured this sector. Your wounded are receiving medical care aboard our ships. We will return them once this engagement concludes. We again request formal negotiations to prevent further conflict. The chamber was silent now. This was not how wars were fought. Species conquered or were conquered. They did not carefully disable enemies and offer medical care. Orcanis spoke, his voice uncertain. This is one battle. Perhaps they were testing new tactics. It was every battle, Formix replied. For 2 years, humanity fought us with this same approach. They established field hospitals that treated both human and Threnody wounded. They broadcast warnings before every orbital strike, giving our ground forces time to evacuate civilian areas. They offered surrender terms after each engagement. He paused, his compound eyes sweeping across the council. We thought it was a trick. We thought they were trying to make us lower our guard, so we fought harder. We attacked their hospital ships. We ignored their warnings. We rejected every offer of peace. New footage appeared. A human hospital ship clearly marked with medical symbols, drifting in pieces. Formix's voice grew heavy. That was our mistake. We thought hitting their medical vessels would anger them into fighting properly, into showing us their true strength. And did it? Calvex asked. Yes, Formix said, but not in the way we expected. The screens showed a different kind of battle now. Human ships moved faster, hit harder, but still with that same terrible precision. They carved through Threnody defensive lines in days, operations that should have taken months. They bypassed fortified positions and struck at supply chains, communication hubs, command centers. This was 2 weeks after we destroyed their hospital ship, Formix explained. They stopped offering terms. They stopped broadcasting warnings. They simply won. Every battle, every engagement. In 14 days, they achieved total military superiority over our forces. Sung Ho, the young human officer who had come with the delegation, stood near Taemin. He had been just a cadet during the border war, but he had studied every battle. He knew what was coming next in Formix's testimony. The war should have ended there, Formix continued. By every military standard, the Threnody coalition had lost. We had no strategic positions, no supply lines, no hope of victory. We expected humanity to demand our surrender. Instead, they sent a different message. A new recording played. An older human voice, calm and sad. Threnody Coalition Command, this is Admiral J. He of the Earth Defense Force. We have achieved our military objectives. We now return to our original request. We ask for negotiations to prevent further bloodshed. We will maintain current positions and await your response. We do not wish to be your enemies. The chamber stirred. Admiral J. He was present in the delegation. She was elderly now, her hair white, her hands marked by age. But she stood straight, meeting the council's gaze. We did not understand, Formix said. We had attacked them, killed their people, destroyed their hospital ships, and they were asking to negotiate? It made no sense. So we prepared for a trap. We assumed they would use the negotiation to launch a surprise attack. We came to the meeting heavily armed, ready for treachery. He gestured toward Jahi. The Admiral came alone. No weapons, no guards. She sat across from me and said something I have never forgotten. She said, General, we know what you are thinking. You believe we are weak because we seek peace. You are wrong. We seek peace because we are strong. Strong enough to choose when to fight and when to stop. Formix's voice carried across the vast chamber. I asked her why they did not simply destroy us. We had shown them no mercy. Why should they show us any? And she told me something that changed my understanding of warfare forever. The old Threnody general looked at the arbiters directly. She said, because we know what comes after victory. We have won wars before. We have destroyed enemies before. And we learned that destroying an enemy is easy. Living with the consequences is hard, so we choose a different path. We choose to turn enemies into neighbors. It takes longer. It requires patience, but it builds something that lasts. Taemin stepped forward. The war lasted 2 more years, not because we could not win, but because we wanted the Threnody to understand. We fought when necessary, stopped when possible, and never forgot that after the shooting stopped, we would have to share the same galaxy.
I'm gonna hide on the bus stop.
Formix nodded. They were right. Today, the Threnody Coalition and humanity have open borders. We trade, we share technology, we send our children to each other's schools. That would never have happened if they had simply conquered us. They taught us that restraint is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Calvex was quiet for a long moment. This is a moving story, General. But the Vexithari Empire does not need neighbors. We need order, compliance, unity under our rule. Then you do not understand the horror of fighting humanity. Formix said softly. The horror is not their weapons. It is their patience. They will fight you for as long as it takes and they will win. But they will never stop believing they can make you see reason. That is what makes them truly dangerous. They fight wars they know they can win and then choose to win peace instead. The chamber fell silent once more. Somewhere in that silence, the Vexithari Empire began to realize they might have made a terrible miscalculation. The Grand Council chamber remained silent after Formix finished speaking. The old Threnody general had shown them something unexpected, but the Vexithari arbiters did not seem convinced. Calvex broke the silence first. Your testimony is noted, General Formix. But you speak of restraint as if it were unique to humanity. Many species show mercy to defeated enemies. This does not explain why we should treat them differently than any other conquest. Taemin had expected this response. He gestured to Insu, the human cultural anthropologist who had been waiting at the edge of their delegation. Insu was young, barely 30 years old, but he had spent his entire adult life studying the differences between human and alien cultures. High Arbiters, Insu said, stepping into the circle of light. With respect, General Formix was not describing mercy. He was describing something far more specific. May I ask the Council a question? Felthara made a gesture of permission. How many wars has the Vexithari Empire fought? Insu asked. We do not fight wars, Calvex replied. We conduct annexations. We have conquered 847 systems over 3,000 years. Each conquest was necessary for galactic order. And how many of those conquests were against yourselves? Insu asked. How many Vexithari civil wars have there been? The question seemed strange. Orcanis answered with obvious pride. None. The Vexithari achieved unity 5,000 years ago. We have been one people, one government, one purpose ever since. This is our strength. Insu nodded slowly. Now ask humanity the same question. Daun stepped forward, her data device ready. Humanity achieved global unity 112 years ago. Before that, we were divided into nation-states. Those nations fought each other constantly. In our recorded history, which spans approximately 6,000 years, we have documentation of more than 15,000 distinct armed conflicts between human groups. The numbers caused a stir in the chamber. 15,000 wars for one species on one planet? That cannot be accurate, Felthara said. 15,000 conflicts would mean your species fought itself continuously. We did, Daun confirmed. She brought up a timeline on the screens. It showed human history as a long line, with red marks indicating conflicts. The line was almost completely red. On average, there were fewer than 20 years in any century, when some part of humanity was not at war with another part. Formix spoke again, his voice grim. This is what I meant by horror. Not horror at their capability, but horror at their experience. Every species in this chamber has fought external enemies. The Vexithari conquered others. The Threnody defended ourselves. But humanity spent thousands of years fighting themselves. Insu continued. We have words in our languages that most species do not need. Genocide, the complete destruction of a people. Ethnic cleansing, the forced removal of populations. War crimes, acts so terrible that even during conflict we created laws against them. We have these words because we have done these things to each other. The chamber grew uncomfortable. Several species shifted in their seats. The idea of a species repeatedly trying to destroy itself was disturbing. Let me show you something specific, Insu said. The screens changed to show historical footage from Earth's 20th century. This was called the Second World War. It lasted 6 years. By the time it ended, more than 70 million humans were dead. The footage showed cities burning, armies clashing, people suffering. The council watched in growing horror. 70 million dead in 6 years? For one planet? During this war, Insu continued, humanity developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We call them nuclear weapons. By the end of the war, we had used 2 of them. Each one killed more than 100,000 people instantly. More footage appeared. The mushroom clouds rising over 2 Japanese cities. The devastation that followed. The council members who had been laughing earlier were not laughing now. And then something remarkable happened, Insu said. We stopped. We had these weapons. We continued to build more of them. At one point, humanity possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy all life on our planet several times over, but we never used them in war again. Borkanis leaned forward. Why not? If you had such power, why not conquer your enemies completely? Admiral Jahe stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but it carried clearly through the chamber. Because some of us remembered what it was like to be the enemy. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I was 7 years old when the last global war ended. I lived in a city that was firebombed. Do you know what that means? Bombs designed not to destroy buildings, but to create firestorms that would burn everything alive. I hid in a shelter with my mother and my brother. We could hear the city burning above us, smell it, feel the heat. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Jahe's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. When we emerged 3 days later, our home was gone. My father was gone. Most of our neighbors were gone. I was one of millions of children who grew up in the ashes of that war. And I made a choice. I decided that no child, human or otherwise, should ever have to hide in a shelter like I did. She looked directly at the arbiters. That is why humanity restrains itself. Not because we cannot wage total war. We can. We know exactly how to do it. We have instruction manuals for every method of destruction ever invented. But we also know what comes after. We lived through it. We carry those scars. And we decided that knowledge should be used to prevent war, not to win it. Insu brought up new displays. Human military academies teach something called the laws of armed conflict. Every soldier learns rules for warfare. Rules about targeting, about prisoners, about civilians, about proportional response. We have international courts that prosecute war crimes. We have treaties limiting certain weapons. Why would anyone need rules for war? Calvex asked, genuinely confused. Because without rules, war becomes extermination, Taemin answered. We learned that the hard way. We learned that if you fight without limits, everyone loses. The winner, the loser, everyone. So we created limits. Not to make war gentle, but to make peace possible afterward. Vormix added his own observation. This is what shocked me during the border war. Human soldiers carried books listing what they could and could not do in combat. They had officers whose only job was to make sure these rules were followed. Even while fighting us, even when we showed them no mercy, they followed their own laws. I thought it was weakness. I was wrong. It was discipline born from experience. A new voice spoke up from the council seating. It was Rixnal, a younger Vexithari who served as an observer on the council. Ambassador Taemin, I have studied your submission documents. You claim humanity has developed 2,000 methods of societal destruction. Why would you create such knowledge? We did not create it intentionally, Taemin replied. We discovered it through trial and error, through making mistakes, through hurting each other and learning from the consequences. Every method of destruction we know came from something we did to ourselves first. Insu pulled up a list on the screens. It was long, scrolling slowly. Psychological warfare techniques, economic manipulation tactics, biological weapons protocols, information warfare strategies, social engineering methods. We have detailed documentation for all of these because we used all of these against each other. But you also have methods for peace, Rixnal said. It was not a question, but a hope. We do, Jahe confirmed. We have conflict resolution procedures, diplomatic frameworks, post-war reconstruction protocols, economic cooperation models. We know 10,000 ways to build peace because we failed at peace 10,000 times before we succeeded. Taemin stepped to the center of the circle. High Arbiters, you asked why you should treat humanity differently. Here is your answer. We are not different because we are strong. We are different because we know what it means to be weak. We know what it means to lose. We know what it means to suffer. And we know what it means to recover from suffering and choose a better path. Every species you have conquered learned one lesson from you, he continued. That resistance is futile. But humanity learned a different lesson from ourselves. That victory is temporary. That enemies can become allies. That the only way to truly win is to create a peace that benefits everyone. Vormix spoke one final time. I came here to warn you, High Arbiters. Not to threaten you, but to warn you. If you fight humanity, you will face an enemy who knows every dark secret of warfare. But worse than that, you will face an enemy who refuses to hate you, who will defeat you and then try to teach you, who will show you a mirror of your own capacity for cruelty and ask you to be better. That is the true horror. Not their weapons, but their forgiveness. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different, less certain, less confident. The Vexthari Empire had conquered 847 systems by being strong. Now they faced a species whose strength came from having been broken and choosing to heal. The Grand Council chamber erupted into debate. Species who had sat quietly for hours now argued loudly with their neighbors. Some demanded humanity's immediate destruction. Others called for further investigation. The Vexithari Arbiters watched silently from their crystalline spheres, conferring through their private communication network. Borthun, the Vexthari military commander, rose from his position in the military section. His presence commanded attention. The chamber grew quiet again as he approached the center floor, stopping just outside the circle of light where the humans stood. I have listened to these testimonies, Borthun said, his voice hard, and I find myself more convinced than ever that humanity must be destroyed. Not in spite of what we have learned, but because of it. Taemin remained calm, though Jiwoo tensed beside him. They had expected this argument. A species that knows 2,000 ways to destroy civilizations is exactly the kind of threat we cannot permit to exist. Borthun continued. Your own words condemn you. You fought yourselves for 6,000 years. You developed weapons capable of extinguishing all life on your world. You documented every method of psychological, biological, and social warfare. And now you ask us to believe you have changed? That you will use this knowledge peacefully? Several species murmured in agreement. The logic seemed sound. How could such a dangerous species be trusted? Vormix stepped forward, but Taemin raised a hand, stopping him. Commander Borthun makes a fair point, the human ambassador said. We are dangerous. We do not deny that, but he misunderstands the nature of our danger. Taemin gestured to Haiwan, who had been standing quietly at the edge of their delegation. She was a quantum physicist, not a diplomat or soldier, and she looked nervous as she entered the circle of light, but her voice was steady when she spoke. High Council, my name is Haiwan. I lead Earth's Quantum Defense Initiative. I am here to explain something we call the Dead Hand Protocol. The screens activated again, showing complex diagrams of distributed networks and automated systems. If Earth is destroyed, if our colonies are wiped out, if humanity is eliminated, certain systems will activate automatically. These systems cannot be stopped, cannot be negotiated with, cannot be convinced to show mercy. She paused, letting that sink in. They will identify every species, every individual, every government entity that participated in humanity's destruction. And they will systematically dismantle those civilizations using every method we have documented. Not with exotic weapons, not with bombs or fleets, but with information. Borthun's expression darkened. You threaten us with information? Not a threat, Haiwan said quietly. A warning. We know how to collapse economies by manipulating financial systems. We know how to trigger social unrest by exploiting cultural divisions. We know how to engineer biological agents that target specific genetic markers. We know how to wage psychological warfare that breaks the will of entire populations. She looked around the chamber. We know all of this because we did all of this to ourselves. And we documented everything so we would never forget the cost. The Dead Hand Protocol contains instructions for implementing every single method. If humanity falls, that knowledge does not die with us. It spreads automatically everywhere. Chan Wu, commander of Earth's defense network, stepped forward. The systems are already in place. Quantum encrypted data caches hidden throughout this galaxy and several others. If Earth's beacon stops transmitting, they activate. No human needs to give the order. No human even needs to survive. It is automatic. The chamber fell silent. This was not a bluff. The humans were describing a weapon more terrible than any fleet, any bomb, any traditional military threat. They were describing weaponized knowledge that would outlive them. This is madness, Felthera said. You would doom other species to destruction even after your own death. We would prefer not to, Timon said simply. That is why we are here. That is why we requested this audience. We are offering the Vexthari Empire a choice. He stepped to the very center of the circle, looking up at the three arbiters. Choice 1, attack Earth, destroy our worlds, kill our people, and then discover what total war with humanity truly means. Not war where we try to minimize casualties, not war where we follow our own rules, but war where we have already lost everything and have nothing left to restrain us. His voice grew softer but no less intense. Our automated systems will wage that war for us. They will use every terrible method we have ever conceived. They will turn your own populations against you. They will corrupt your economies. They will introduce diseases we designed specifically to bypass your biology's defenses. They will whisper secrets that tear your societies apart from within. And the second choice? Calvex asked. Accept humanity as equals, Taman said. Recognize our sovereignty. Allow us to join the galactic community on our own terms. And in exchange, we will share something more valuable than any weapon. Rixnal, the young Vexithari observer, leaned forward. What could be more valuable than the weapons you describe? The knowledge of why we stopped using them, Jahi answered, stepping forward. We know 2,000 ways to destroy civilizations, but we also know the one way to build something that lasts. We know how to transform enemies into allies, how to heal from trauma, how to create peace from the ashes of war. She looked at Rixnal directly. You asked earlier how many ways we know to build civilizations. The answer is simple. We know one way, together. That is the only method that ever worked for us. Every time we tried to build peace through domination, through subjugation, through forcing others to accept our way, it failed. Every time. Insu brought up new displays showing Earth's transition from warring nations to unified world. This is our gift if you will accept it. The knowledge of how we achieved global unity, not through conquest but through cooperation, how we created a planetary government that respects local differences while working toward common goals, how we built trust between former enemies. Bormik spoke from his position. This is why I came here, not to defend humanity from your empire, but to defend your empire from its own mistakes. The Vexthari have conquered 847 systems in 3,000 years. That is impressive. But humanity conquered their entire world in less than 300 years, then spent the next century learning to govern it peacefully. Which is more difficult? Which requires more wisdom? Borthon shook his head. Words. Philosophy. None of this changes the threat you represent. You admit you have these weapons, these systems, this capacity for destruction? We do, Taman agreed, and we always will. You cannot unknow something. We cannot forget what we learned through 6,000 years of conflict, but we can choose what we do with that knowledge. He turned to address the entire council, not just the arbiters. Every species in this chamber was conquered by the Vexithari Empire. You learned that resistance brings destruction. But what did you learn about peace? About cooperation? About building something together? The conquered species stirred. Many had never been asked such questions. We offer you a different lesson, Taman continued. We offer to show you how enemies become friends, how competitors become partners, how fear transforms into trust. These are harder lessons than conquest. They take longer. They require patience. But they create something that force never can. They create a peace that does not require constant enforcement. Rixnal stood up from his observer seat. It was a breach of protocol, but the young Vexithari seemed unable to contain himself. Ambassador Taman, if humanity knows all these ways to destroy civilizations, how did you stop yourselves from using them?
What changed?
Taman smiled sadly. We realized something fundamental. Winning feels good for a moment, but peace feels good forever. We got tired of moments. We wanted something that would last. So we made a choice. We chose to be better than our worst impulses. We chose to remember our mistakes instead of repeating them. We chose to become teachers instead of conquerors. And that choice, Jahi added, is available to everyone, including the Vexthari Empire. The question is not whether humanity is dangerous, we are. The question is whether you want to face that danger as an enemy, or embrace the wisdom that came from it as an ally. The chamber fell silent once more. The Vexthari arbiters conferred privately. The conquered species waited. The humans stood in their circle of light, having laid everything bare. Their capabilities, their history, their offer. Now it was the galaxy's turn to choose. 3 months had passed since the council session. The Grand Council chamber had debated for 6 days straight after the human presentation. Species argued, factions formed, positions hardened and softened. In the end, the Vexthari arbiters called for a vote. It was the first time in 3,000 years that the council had voted on whether to conquer a species. The vote was close. 431 species voted to accept humanity's petition for independent status. 416 voted for conquest. The Vexthari Empire, bound by its own ancient laws, accepted the majority decision. Humanity would remain free. But the vote was only the beginning. What came after changed the galaxy in ways no one expected. Rixnal stood in a small conference room aboard the Vexthari diplomatic station, looking nervous. Across from him sat Taemin and Insu. 3 months ago, Rixnal had been a junior observer, forbidden from speaking during council sessions. Now he had requested a private meeting with human representatives. "Thank you for seeing me," Rixnal said. His translator rendered his voice as youthful, uncertain. "I know this is unusual, but I have a request." "We are listening," Taemin said gently. "I want to study human history," Rixnal said in a rush. "Not military history? Social history. I want to understand how you transitioned from warring nations to planetary unity, how you convinced enemies to become partners, how you built trust after centuries of betrayal." Insu leaned forward, interested. "Why?" "Because the Vexthari Empire is old," Rixnal said quietly. 5,000 years old. We achieved unity so long ago that no one remembers how. We only remember that we have always been unified. But the species we conquer, they are not unified. They resist. They rebel. We maintain order through force, and it requires constant effort. He looked directly at Taemin. "I watched the council vote. I saw species that hate each other vote the same way. Species that the Vexthari conquered centuries apart, who have nothing in common. They agreed on your petition. How did you do that in 6 days when we have failed to do it in 3,000 years? Taemin considered the question carefully. "We did not unite them. We showed them something they had in common. A choice. Face us as enemies or join us as equals. The conquered species saw that choice and recognized it. Many of them never got to make that choice when the Vexthari came. So you manipulated them," Rixnal said, but without accusation. He sounded like he was trying to understand. "No," Insu corrected. "We gave them information and let them decide. That is different from manipulation. Manipulation removes choice. Information enables it." Taemin nodded. "I will agree to your request, Rixnal, but on one condition. We show you everything. The good decisions and the terrible ones. The successful peace treaties and the failed ones. The moments we chose wisely and the moments we chose destruction. You cannot learn from our successes without understanding our failures." "I accept," Rixnal said immediately. "When can we begin?" "Today," Insu said, pulling out a data device. "We will start with the hardest part. The wars we are ashamed of. The conflicts where we were the villains. If you can face those and still want to learn, then we will show you how we healed from them." Halfway across the galaxy, on the Threnody homeworld, another meeting was taking place. Admiral Jahe stood in a newly constructed building, looking at the sign above the entrance. It read, in both human and Threnody languages, "Institute for Conflict Resolution and Post-War Reconstruction." General Vormix stood beside her, his old carapace gleaming in the afternoon sun. "I never thought I would see this day," he said. "A school dedicated to ending wars, built by two species who fought each other." "That is exactly why it needs to exist," Jahe replied. "We know what war costs, both of us. Who better to teach others how to avoid it?" The first class of students was arriving. Young Threnodian humans, along with representatives from a dozen other species. They came to learn negotiation techniques, peace-building strategies, post-conflict reconstruction methods. All the knowledge humanity had gained from their 6,000 years of fighting and 100 years of peace. Jahe watched them enter and thought about the 7-year-old girl who had hidden in a shelter while her city burned. That girl could never have imagined this, standing on an alien world, teaching former enemies how to prevent the suffering she had endured. "Do you think it will work?" Vormix asked. "Can we really teach species to choose peace?" "We can teach them that peace is a choice," Jahe answered. "What they do with that knowledge is up to them, but at least they will know the option exists." On Earth, in the Human Archive Center, Dayun and Jiwoo worked late into the night. They were compiling humanity's complete historical records for upload to the Galactic database. Every war, every peace treaty, every failure and success. Everything. Chan Wu had argued against releasing certain information. Some of this is too dangerous, he insisted.
The bioweapon research?
The psychological warfare techniques, the social manipulation protocols. If hostile species access this, they could use it against us. Jiwoo paused in her work. We are not sharing weapons. We are sharing warnings. Every document includes context, the casualties, the consequences, the aftermath. When someone reads about nerve agents, they also read about the children who suffered from them. When they study propaganda techniques, they also study the societies that were torn apart by them. She is right, Daun added. Knowledge is only dangerous if it is incomplete. We are providing complete knowledge, the costs alongside the methods, the regrets alongside the victories. Hyunwoo entered the archive center carrying more data cores. Latest upload is ready. The complete records from the resource wars, including our mistakes. Good, Dayun said. The mistakes are the most important part. Anyone can document their successes. It takes courage to document your failures. In border space, where human and Vexthari territories met, Sung-ho oversaw the construction of the first joint colony. 5 species had volunteered to participate. Humans, Threnody, Vexthari, and 2 species that had been conquered by the Empire centuries ago. It was chaos. Species with different environmental needs, different social structures, different communication methods, all trying to build a shared community. Arguments erupted daily. Misunderstandings caused delays. Cultural conflicts threatened to derail the entire project. But slowly, solutions emerged. The human engineers worked with Vexthari architects to design modular habitats. Threnody mediators helped resolve disputes using techniques learned at Jaehee's Institute. The conquered species, given a voice for the first time in centuries, contributed ideas no one had considered. Insu visited the colony to document its progress. He walked through the construction site with Sung-ho, observing the organized chaos. It is messy, Sung-ho admitted. Nothing like the clean, efficient colonies the Vexthari built through force. Messy is good, Insu replied. Messy means people are participating. They are arguing, compromising, finding solutions together. That is how you build something that lasts. Not through perfect order imposed from above, but through imperfect cooperation grown from below. He recorded a group of workers, 3 different species, arguing about power grid placement. They were frustrated, talking over each other, gesturing wildly. Then one human suggested a compromise. The others considered it. Slowly they agreed. That, Insu said, pointing at the scene, is worth more than 1,000 perfect colonies, because they built it together. Back in the Grand Council chamber, Borthun stood before the arbiters. The military commander who had argued most strongly for humanity's destruction now delivered his report on the 3 months since the vote. The situation is not what we anticipated, Borthun admitted. We expected humanity to fortify their borders, build weapons, prepare for eventual conflict. Instead, they have opened their archives, shared their knowledge, and begun teaching other species their methods. Calvex leaned forward. And you believe this is a threat? No, Borthun said slowly. I believe it is something far more dangerous than a threat. It is an example. He brought up displays showing activity across the Empire. 17 conquered species have requested access to human historical records. 32 have sent observers to the new institute on the Threnody homeworld. 8 have asked for human advisors to help them establish local governance systems. They are learning, Felthara observed. They are changing, Borthun corrected. For 3,000 years, the conquered species accepted their fate because they saw no alternative. Now they see one. They see a species that fought itself for 6 millennia and then chose peace. They ask, if humanity can change, why cannot we? Calvex was silent for a long moment. And what do you recommend, Commander? Borthun took a deep breath. I recommend we learn from them as well. Not their weapons, not their tactics, but their transition. How they moved from empire building to cooperation. The Vexthari Empire is strong, but strength without wisdom eventually fails. Humanity has wisdom we lack. It was the first time in recorded history that a Vexthari military commander recommended learning from another species rather than conquering them. Rixenal, watching from his observer seat, allowed himself a small hope. Perhaps the galaxy could change after all.